Pokemon rotation is coming up next month in April. It's going to be a scary time. A lot of decks I know that you guys play and that I play are going to take a big hit, but it's also going to be an exciting time too because there's going to be so many new decks that come out with the new set, and a lot of these decks that we're currently playing are going to have to adapt and switch things up a little. And yes, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Miraidon EX is going to take a hit, and I'm not looking forward to it. That said, I asked you guys over on my Instagram at SneakerTalkTCG to ask me a bunch of questions that I could answer for you guys in today's video. So that's what this video is, a little fun Q&A. The last time we did this, I think we talked about like how I was scared of Greninja EX because it was gonna hurt my Miraidon for weakness, and it was brutal. It was brutal. If you guys want to be in an upcoming video where I answer your questions, I know I didn't do like a 50,000 subscriber Q&A, so we're gonna do a 50,000 subscriber Q&A. So if you want to be in that video, just comment your questions down below. First question is going to be an easy one. It comes in from Roddy is Better. What's your favorite Pokemon? It's Blastoise. I was gonna say Blastoise EX, but it's Blastoise. It is Blastoise. I got a lot of love for Squirtle too. I have a couple of Squirtle plushies. This one's my favorite plushie. And then I also got this massive one too I picked up in Japan. And I nicknamed mine in Leaf Green Shell Shocker based off of the Mewtwo movie or the Pokemon movie from way back in the day. Next question comes in from Mr. Sir 787. They ask, will Miraidon suffer a lot after rotation, and could it possibly survive or see niche use? All right, so will Miraidon suffer a lot after rotation? Yes, Miraidon will be suffering. It's right now probably in the top 5 decks. I'd personally say it's really high up there, but we're gonna take a massive hit similar to how we took kind of a massive hit last rotation as well, losing Flaffy. But this time, instead of losing our energy acceleration, we're losing attackers and a whole bunch more. So maybe I'll do a dedicated video talking about the changes that are gonna come to Miraidon and how it's going to fall a lot in power level. Is it gonna see niche uses? Possibly. We'll see how we can rebuild it, but honestly, I'm not too torn up about Miraidon getting nerfed to the ground, because I've been playing Miraidon for like 2 years. Like ever since Scarlet and Violet base set came out, I've been pretty much maining that deck non-stop. I've been dabbling with a lot of decks out there, but Miraidon is probably my most played deck. Well, by far. It's not even a probability. It is the most played deck that I've ever played, even more so than like Zacian and stuff like that. But there's so many new decks coming out that I'm looking forward to playing that it kind of takes away the sting and the pain of having to change decks. You know, I know there's players out there who are having their decks completely rotated out. Like, you can no longer play Lost Box. You can't play Giratina. You can't play Lugia. There's so many decks completely getting destroyed, so I can sleep a little easier knowing that if I still want to try and rebuild Miraidon, I still can. You know, it's still there. Miraidon has a great ability. Its ability is just so good that if there's any sort of great lightning decks that could be created, Miraidon's easily gonna be a top contender for one of the Pokemons we put in there. All good things have to come to an end, and I'm ready for this next chapter. Next question comes in from Swoos. It's similar to the last one. I probably won't talk about the Miraidon question too much because this is just gonna become a Miraidon Q&A video, and we could totally just do one of those. But for this question, they say, what deck are you going to play post-rotation for your locals? So the first deck I'm gonna instantly gravitate towards is, I have kind of the deck being built right here, right now. I'm really looking forward to playing this one, our Chaladon EX, and I'm going to be pairing it with my old friend Zacian, Hops Zacian to be specific. If you guys are newer to the channel, Zacian was like my main deck for quite some time. I played it specifically because I had bought the Arceus Dialga Palkia League battle deck, and this was just before rotation. So once rotation hit, ADP, all those tag team decks rotated out, and I was bummed out, but I still had Zacian V, and Zacian V was still considered in the top 10 decks, and even in the top 5, eventually just dwindled and it just got power crept, and just it was no longer a sufficient deck to play in the meta that we were going into. So Zacian V just eventually fell out of favor and out of popularity completely, but I still played it, and I kept playing it, and I kept going to tournaments, and I kept showing up to locals, and I kept losing week after week after week, but I still had a lot of fun. You know, like for me, playing Pokemon isn't always about winning. Like I was playing a deck that was no longer good into the meta, and it was just no longer that good, right? But I would play Miraidon and win with it, and it was good in the meta, and I would still play it, and I would win, and then I would keep playing it when it was bad in the meta and still win, or at least perform above average and still do really well with it, which was like, it was nice to see that my deck building and my like skill set in playing was definitely improving. Going into this next format, into this like next season as well, once we get past it in the summer, is I'm gonna really try and potentially go more all in on the really competitive aspect of it. I'm gonna play rogue decks. You guys know I like to play rogue fun decks, but maybe we take going for the World's Invite really serious next season, because this season, the second that they announced that Worlds to qualify, the threshold was like top 150 or top 125 in North America, I was like, okay, I know I'm good, but I know I'm not that good. This season, this year, I really decided to go and focus on fun, having fun, playing fun decks, but also focusing on refining my skills and becoming a better player. So when it comes to next season, I have a better chance, and you know, it doesn't feel as risky spending a lot of money going to major after major after major. Next question is not a question, but it comes in from the homie Sparky the Barber. He says, I want to be in all your videos. I'm your #1 fan. You know what? I love you, Fausto. Here's a clip of me and him in Pittsburgh. He was also a subscriber of my old channel Sneaker Talk back in the day when I used to make a lot of sneaker content. So shout out to the homie Sparky the Barber, and he's a dad. He's a daddy now. He's a daddy. So shout out to the homie. Next question comes in from Joseph Romero 313. It is, any advice on starting out Pokemon card collecting? Find a really nice binder that you're gonna really enjoy throwing your cards into. Don't just get like any binder, get a genuinely nice binder that whenever you're gonna carry it around and open it, it's gonna feel good to have. And then figure out what kind of collecting goals you wanna have as well. Do you wanna collect very specific Pokemon? Do you wanna collect artwork or Pokemon cards from a very specific illustrator in the Pokemon universe? Do you want to go for a master set? You want to make these clear, defined goals. That way it's easier for you to chase after cards. When you're looking for cards, you know what you're looking for. That way it doesn't become super overwhelming. Another thing as well is make sure that if you are trying to chase a big, like a card, like a very particular chase card, know your limit of how many booster packs you're willing to open and how much money you're willing to spend to try and rip and chase it and pull it for yourself. Because after a certain point, it's just like, man, I spent X hundreds of dollars to try and get this one card and I couldn't get it. So it's always, just remember, it is always 100% cheaper, 100% cheaper. It's cheaper 100% of the time to buy the cards as a single than to try and pull it yourself. However, you know, when you're buying booster packs, you're sort of gambling. You know, you're paying for an experience to try and pull it yourself rather than actually buy it. So have fun with it. For me, one thing I really like to do is, if I'm wanting to buy booster packs, I have this itch to buy packs, I want to research the sets and I want to know what are the cards in the set. So when I continue to open it up, it doesn't suck when you pull cards that are considered hits and stuff that aren't the major chase cards. So you're pulling maybe your top 5 or top 6 card and you're not going to be bummed out, rather than buying a set where you only really want 1 or 2 cards in it. So it's just gonna always be unsatisfying when you open the pack and the card's not there, and then you have to go through the extra hassle of either selling or trading those cards to try and get the one you really want. So clear defined collecting goals, figure out what kind of collector you want to be, and always remember, buying singles is always cheaper, and know your limits when it comes to spending on whatever it is, whatever it might be. And of course, always try trading. You know, who knows? You might not have to buy with actual cash. Maybe you've already spent a lot of money on cards that you no longer want. If you can trade those, find the right person to trade with, it's always good. Also, bring your binder with you to Pokemon card tournaments when you go. A lot of players like to trade at these Pokemon card tournaments. There's often downtime in between rounds, so you can do these deals in between, so you're not bored and you're having fun and you're looking at other people's collections. So yeah, those are a bunch of general collecting tips coming from a person who I don't really collect anymore. When I collect, it's more so I like to bling out very specific cards in my decks for competitive play. I'm no longer chasing like every Blastoise card, for example. But from time to time, you know, if there's a really cool card, I'm gonna scoop it up. But yeah, these days I am much more of a competitive player than I am a collector. Ivan Go 3210 ask, any turbo deck recommendations for post rotation? Ooh, turbo decks for post rotation. So from what I've been hearing, Raging Bolt, and from what I've seen, Raging Bolt is a really strong turbo deck. However, it's hard to really call it a turbo deck necessarily because I think one of the most optimal ways to play it is kind of with the Noctowl engine, where you're using the Jewel Seeking ability and you're going to grab like your Sada, your energy retrievals or whatever. So it's hard to say if Raging Bolt will be considered a turbo deck anymore. Obviously, Miraidon could still be a really good choice. We just have to figure out the right way to build it. Another good turbo deck you could say is Future Box. I've been really cooking with Future Box. I feel like it is an underrated deck at the moment, especially because Miraidon, like the baby dragon type Miraidon with the future typing, is a really solid attacker and energy accelerator, and it also knocks out Pokemon as well, like Bidoof. And if you have the Iron Crowns on the board too, you're also going to hit for extra numbers. And yeah, so I think Future Box might be the sleeper best turbo deck. The homie Night Owls TCG. I have to answer your Discord messages, homie. I'm so bad with Discord. What post rotation decks are you looking at? All right, so I actually have a list right here. Let me get my list. Number 1 is Hopsation. That's the deck I'm going to try in main. I know it was really hyped up on Twitter and stuff when a lot of the cards were announced. However, the builds just haven't been optimized to its fullest potential. There's not a lot of top players playing it. A lot of top players are playing other decks. So I think Hopsation could be my special pet deck for post-rotation. Lily's Clefairy. Lily's Clefairy is also another turbo style deck that has like a Lightning Rondo style of attack like Raikou V once did. So Lily's Clefairy, I believe, also hits for weakness into Dragon, so you kind of get to smack the best decks in format like Dragapult EX and Raging Bolt for weakness. So that sounds very, very enticing. I know Lily's a very popular character as well. And, you know, Lily's Clefairy, that sounds kind of fun. You're just smacking people up with a freaking Clefairy. That sounds like a good time. And I'm sure it's going to be good for YouTube views. So, you know, if I could make a deck that performs well, anti-meta, turbo, and is a fan favorite character like Lily, I think Lily's Clefairy might be a no-brainer. I really want to build Iono's Belly Bolt, just because, you know, I would consider myself like a lightning type trainer. If I was like a, you know, if I was a gym leader of some sort, I would definitely be like a lightning trainer. So Iono's Belly Bolt. However, we don't know the best way to build it just of yet. From what I've been seeing, Iono's Belly Bolt is best paired with Raging Bolt, so I'm trying to figure out what I want to name the deck. Is it going to be called Iono's Raging Bolt? You know? Yeah? Yeah? Or Iono's Raging Belly? Yeah? Yeah? And Zoroark, that sounds really fun to make too. However, I think N's Zoroark might be unnecessarily expensive at the start of rotation just because it's Zoroark, just because it's N. The power level isn't necessarily there from what I've been seeing. You know, it looks cool on paper. You have that trade style or trade ability, but it's all going to come down to the attackers that you have available for N's Pokemon and what the meta shapes up. But I think N Zoroark is another deck too that is one that would be very tempting for a lot of top players to play once they figure out the best way to play it, or if it can be a top 3 deck, I feel like a lot of players are going to gravitate towards it. Future Hands in here, so some sort of turbo Future Hands with like Future Box. I've also been experimenting with Future Box without Iron Hands. You're mainly attacking with a Baby Miraidon, or you're attacking with Iron Valiant. You're doing this chip damage, taking multiple prize knockout turns, and I've been doing that in like offline, like not offline, but I've been doing that on Pokemon Trading Card Game Live, not streaming, just like private games, just like offline. Dragapult, you know, it's always good to, even if you don't plan to play the best deck in format, I think knowing how the best deck in format will operate and stuff is really important. So I'm going to play some Dragapult. Dragapult Charizard is the way I want to really play Dragapult if I plan to play it, because I've been playing it a lot recently and it feels really good. Like, it's Charizard, good. Dragapult, good. It really does remind me of if I were to make a Pokemon card deck as a 10-year-old and I'm taking like a binder drop of all the best cards I could think of and just throw it all together, and it actually works with some cohesion. Dragapult Charizard might be the way to go. Flareon Hydreigon, Meowscarada EX, another one that I know a lot of people want to see me build. This one might surprise you, but It's going to be Galvantula EX. One more question from Night Owls TCG. It is also, do you play Marvel Rivals? And the answer to that is yes, I do play Marvel Rivals, but I don't play it all that much. I'm not too crazy about Marvel Rivals. I do prefer Overwatch over Marvel Rivals, but when I do play Marvel Rivals, I love to play Widow and go into ranked and insta-lock Widow and watch my team cry and just like flame me. And then I like to do well, and then they have to like shush and respect me, and that feels really good. Punisher, Bucky, Cloak and Dagger is like my main for supports, along with Invisible Woman. I love Invisible Woman. She has so many great skins. The only tank I play in Marvel Rivals would have to be Venom. Next question comes in from King Slayer. Will Badoo ever be out of every deck? And yeah, honestly, Badoo is here, and it's here to stay. Badoo is just so good. It's one of those cards where it's like, if you can't beat him, join him. You might as well throw in a one-off copy of Badoo. The fact that its attack is no attack cost and it has free retreat, it just has so much great things going for it. And if you have a lackluster turn, a buddy poffin, attach, bring in your Badoo, and grief your opponent always sounds pretty fun. Wallace.lab asks, please talk about Miraidon post-rotation and your strategy on... And that was all that was there because the rest of the question cut off. But basically, we lose a lot of good attackers, right? We might have to adapt the list to maybe a double Magneton list. We might have to go back to Prime Catcher. We might pair Miraidon with Iono's Belly Bolt. That could be pretty cool too. We really have to experiment. There's also a world where we might use Magneton EX, right? Or Magnezone EX, that's the card. Because if we're going double Magneton, maybe there's a world where we just can't afford to explode the other Magneton and give up an easy prize card for our opponent for some energy acceleration. But Magnezone EX does have, you know, really high HP. I think it's like, what, 330 HP, a pretty cheap attack cost, and it does mean that our Magneton still provides us value other than blowing itself up. So I don't want to milk Miraidon if there's no more milk left in it. Truly_O'Shea_B_. It says tips to build a good deck. There's a couple things you really have to take in account for building a good deck. One, how are you going to beat the top 3 to top 5 decks in the meta? You have to know what is your competition, what are the strengths of the competition that would hurt potentially your game plan. For example, let's say Regidrago V-Star is still the best deck out there, and they're going to play all these great attackers. What attackers are they going to use against you? If you're scared about your little baby Pokemon blowing up because they have the attack of Kyurem, well, then you know by default you're going to have to include a card like a Manaphy in your list. So you really want to think about not only defensively, how are you going to play against those decks, but also what can you do that would take advantage of against playing those decks? What can you have in your deck that counters the best decks? If you're not going to play the best deck, right? If you're building a deck from scratch, you just want to be aware of what the competition is and make sure you're not punished for weakness, for example, or stuff like that. So be aware of weakness. Weakness is always like the easy way to kind of factor into your deck building. And then the other like 2 big things are, what is your form of energy acceleration? How are you getting energies on the board? Are you going to use an ability from a Pokemon? Are you going to rely on something like the Crispin engine? Are you going to use item cards like Electric Generator? So energy acceleration is the next thing to really account for when building a deck. And the last thing that's really important too is your draw engine. Are you going to use heavy supporter count with maybe some Pokegears to really ensure you get to play those supporters every turn? Or are you going to rely on abilities to let you draw cards like Babarrel or Mew-EX or Revavroom or Curly Refinement? How are we going to draw cards? Because drawing cards is, you know, the more cards you see, the better. Pheasantipity. By default, most decks are 1 Pheasantipity plus 59 other cards, right? So what are the staples, and then kind of go from there. So energy acceleration, how are you drawing cards, and what are the top decks you have to look out for so they don't take advantage or exploit the weaknesses that you might have in your deck. I think the best tip I can give you is make your deck as consistent as possible. The worst thing in the world, other than losing in Pokemon TCG, is losing because your deck bricks. That is worse than losing. Losing because your deck doesn't want to cooperate with you feels 5 times worse because you're not playing the game. So you want to at least be playing the game. You can't win if you don't play. The homie Tim Tom Limbaum asks, what has been the best tournament experience you've ever had? Ooh, that's a good one. Let's do a regional experience, and we're gonna go with, I want to say Pittsburgh Pokemon Regionals from like a year or two ago. And I had so much fun playing in that, vlogging, it was so much fun. That was probably my favorite, my best tournament experience. And if you guys want to know my worst tournament experience, check out my San Antonio Pokemon Regional Tournament vlog. Next question comes in from Dillian Arez. You mentioned you won't be on Miraidon much anymore. What are some decks you like? I mentioned a whole bunch already, so sorry Dillian, but I wanted to give you a shout out since you did take some time to ask me a question. And then another person who I also want to give a shout out to as well, because they're asking about Miraidon, Jorly Owo. She asked, with post rotation creeping in, what deck are you planning to play next? Big Miraidon believer here. It hurts. It hurts hearing people tell me they love Miraidon and they're excited to see the changes I'm gonna make to the list, and I just know that I might just let them down. I might not have the sauce for them because I'm really just looking forward to the next best thing. My new shiny object. Hop Station is a big one for me. I want to use my Zacian staff playmat that the homie Yeoman gave me, and I want to use it with Hop Station. Next question comes in from Den_U789. Is Shenpao still a competitive deck? And the answer to that is no, it's dead. It's dead. Next question comes in from Immortal. They ask, no question, just shout out the Roaring Moon deck. It was a worthy deck to play with. Honestly, yeah, I really enjoyed Roaring Moon. Roaring Moon is a lot of fun to play. If you guys did enjoy watching today's video, consider watching my best Pokemon experience, the vlog I had here. And if you want to see my worst Pokemon experience, click here. Japan Adventures, click here. It's not competitive, but it's just a fun time of me running around Japan. Comfy hobbies, code SneakerTalk for 5% off. And yeah, peace out.